English translation, 151st contact. Monday, 12th of October, 1981. Gizuro Parnyo, 07 hours.
Man, you came back pretty quickly. It was only on Saturday that we had a contact together. What brings you here so urgently?
My coming is of urgency because there are, yet another time, unpleasant things are on the horizon, which could once again lead to signs of disintegration in the center, and thus among the group members. It is very unfortunate that such incidents occur again and again when new members are chosen. This time it concerns Thomas, for whom I already had to bring up a reproach. In anticipation that he would rebel against the issued regulations and ordinal rules, I have endeavored since Saturday morning for a detailed checkup about him. It became apparent with this that he rebels against the regulations and that he wants to share a corresponding document with you. In the course of this present day, you might receive this letter from him, but which you should not deal with in more detail, but rather hand it over to the responsible persons of the group, so the group's committee, which is competent and responsible for this. The committee has to take this important matter to hand and make it clear to Thomas that he is in the wrong and that he cannot continue being a group member in this manner. Exceptions cannot be approved anymore, not even for him. Consequently, he also has to adjust himself into the given ordinal rules. One exception immediately leads to the next exception for him, and the order is already broken again. We ourselves, as well as the long-standing group members, have collected enough experiences in this to know that this is actually so. Just one exception would inevitably lead to the beginning of a new destruction, which is why none can be allowed. Thomas is of the mistaken assumption that he can have special privileges for himself because he has set himself in a certain closer connection with K. Even though he must realize what the ordinal rules mean for all those who are to be regarded as group members or as those interested in the teaching and so on. The ordinal rules and the house rules, however, are also valid for him. So his ideas which he wants to submit to you are not acceptable, namely that he only wants to visit the center during visiting hours on Tuesday, in order to be together with Kay. However, this is just as unacceptable as also his idea that he could spend each Friday night to Saturday sleeping with Kay, without having to complete the established night watch, to work then on Saturday morning. He is a core group member, and as such he is incorporated into the regulations of the group and thus into the statutes and ordinal rules and house rules, which he has to heed and to fulfill. However, if he does not follow these from now on, then the statutory period is to be granted to him as a time to reflect and change, after which he is to be excluded from the group upon a failure to follow the rules, in accordance with the statute articles which state that the center must remain closed to him in the future.
But I cannot give him the report to read because your instruction is that the reports may only be handed over to the group members once a month, so that also in this respect more order will finally prevail.
That is of correctness, and this rule also should not be broken without exception. What can be done, however, is that in important concerns, the chairperson summons the respective group members to himself or herself, in order to read aloud the necessary details of each of these reports, but without handing over these reports for the personal inspection of the individuals concerned. However, this should only be handled in such a manner in urgent cases, and Thomas is currently such an urgent case.
Then I have acted wrongly.
How am I to understand that?
Thomas asked me if he could examine the latest report pages. I then told him that this was not allowed, as a result of your instruction that the reports may only be released once a month at the meetings.
Your explanation was of correctness, and thus represents no wrong action, even if Thomas, in his irrational and almost childish rebel sense, thinks that he could personally demand from you that you must provide him with the transmissions, which he will also address in his letter, like also the threat that he wants to take up a personal fight with me if I am not in accordance with his will. For my part, I find that such threats and demands are more than just malicious and destructive, and can only find a corresponding punishment, which, nevertheless, falls to the judicial power of the group's committee. Such Ausartungen, the getting very badly out of control of the good human nature, just cannot be tolerated in the group because they inevitably lead to new destruction, as was always the case. Especially now that very much in the group has fundamentally changed for the better, and that every single member strives significantly to our and also to all group members' happiness. May such rebellious and destructive outbursts not newly appear or even be tolerated. And in order to suggest all this to you once again, and give you the task of talking to Engelbert as chairperson about this, I am back again so quickly. And Engelbert should regulate this matter with Thomas, because as chairperson, this is his duty, along with the remaining available committee.
However, Thomas will unreasonably bring his association with Kay into play.
Nevertheless, no exception can be made, and moreover, Thomas knows the given rules as well as any other group member.
But then I have a question. How do you handle such cases on Era?
We know of no such problems because every human being on our world abides by the unwritten laws and recommendations.
Schälchen 12.10. Nade 1.
Dear Billy, it is now that I also have a huge problem. I am totally desperate. I just do not understand certain things at all anymore. I am also very sorry that I have to approach you. You already have enough problems, but you are the only one who can help me. So then, it's all about Kay, of course. What I feared has now happened much sooner. Specifically, it concerns being together with Kay. But I have to say something first. Namely, I know that I have made many mistakes recently, but I have tried to correct them as quickly as possible. For example, night watch. I also have no doubt that in time we will get it together. So, 1. A relationship between two partners must also work on itself. They must get to know each other and work out a unity. Is that of correctness? 2. If I had a girlfriend in Fairaltorf and I visited her twice a week to build up a partnership according to point 1, then Quetzal or the Figu would hardly have anything against it. Right? 3. But now I have stationed my friend at the Figu Mother Center. Should everything be different now? I need my time with K4. Now I come to the center to spend some time with her. But now I have to start working strictly according to house rules after 30 minutes. Idiotic, so I am punished for wanting to build a partnership with Kay. I do not mean it quite as harshly as written, but that's about how I feel. 5. I talked to B about working. I told him that I am working my ass off at your place, but I want my free time that I can spend with K6. By stealth, I have now also found out that I am no longer allowed to sleep at her place either. Now tell me where I find the time for Kay. 7. What is still possible is that I pick her up at your place and take her somewhere, or that she comes to me from time to time. But I can smell Quetzal coming and saying, "It is not good that Kay is neglecting her work, or I do not know what, by often going away from the center." If that happens, I will enter into an open battle with Quetzal. 8. I also know the whole misery with the apple tree guy. Apart from the fact that I think it's the last thing Kay should have been told, is it because of that? 9. That is something I dare not say I demand of you, that you tell me news of Quetzal that concerns Kay and me after you have come to know it. This is because I am actually writing you this letter too soon, because I do not yet know the whole facts exactly. That's why I also asked you on Sunday if I could read the report quickly. I do not think it's right when things that are supposed to take effect immediately are kept for a month. And then you get this and that in the back, and you never know for sure how things really are until they are published. To cut a long story short, all I want is a few hours alone with Kay without being called to work. Because I see a huge difference between coming to the center to kill time and coming to be with my beloved. Now, a very concrete suggestion. I have actually given it some thought and have come to the conclusion that I would like to come to Kay on Tuesday, when it is visiting time anyway, until the witching hour, and on Friday overnight, so that I am ready for work at 8 hours in the morning. Is this really too much to ask? I am coming back to Kay on Tuesday, and I would be very, very glad if you would talk to me about this matter. I certainly would not have approached you if it had not almost torn me apart. I also know that I am oversensitive, but you cannot jump over your own shadow. You can only try very hard. Best wishes from...
Quetzal's statement in sentence 32 was confirmed because the relationship resolved itself.
And how do they look? Or in other words, what do they state when two humans are good for each other, as they say?
They state that two humans who come together and suppose that they can develop deeper feelings for each other have to determine during the time of 3 years whether these feelings are actually existent or not. After this time, they are examined by authoritative experts of the matter, after which then, in the case of a mutual logical consistency of feelings, love, etc., the two can be joined together in marriage. The period of 3 years is divided in such a manner that every 7 days, the two see each other once for several hours, depending on time availability, personally and alone, and spend this time at their sole discretion. But it is absolutely excluded that they spend this time sleeping together or even having sexual relations. Such activity is only acceptable when the examination gives the assurance that they will seal the bond of marriage, which will not be the case with Thomas and Kay. If two such people perform an activity that always or occasionally brings them together during the weekly 7 days, then nothing is to be objected against it. But at the same time, a personal togetherness is not allowed. The reason for this lies therein that each of the two should always have time during 6 days to thoroughly process and consider all of the undergone insights and experiences on the 7th day. Then, in addition to this, after 2 years, there comes a 12-month separation period, during which the two may not see each other. Typically, they work on different planets during this time, in order to maintain sufficient distance and to have time to think. Then, only after this, there follows the aforementioned examination. Other harmless physical contacts, as well as communicative forms, are of course allowed at any time.
I think that this regulation has a lot of value in itself. This might also work on the Earth, when the human being of the Earth thinks a bit rationally.
That is of correctness. It is just that the Earth humans, unfortunately, very often let themselves be guided by wrongly produced and wrongly imagined feelings, by which they just as often become of the confused and incomprehensible view that they could not live anymore without that person whom they have chosen as a partner. And that is where the crucial point begins. The Earth human being chooses his or her partner incorrectly, which leads to divorces in more than 50% of all cases. The law of the love, however, says that always those partners should come together, who are vibrationally determined for each other by true Empfindungen, fine spiritual perceptions, in life.
That is clear to me, and also to most of our group. But with the majority of humanity, a lack of clarity still prevails.
That is known to me, but not only in this respect, because also in reference to sexual interests, confused views sometimes prevail. It is even supposed that through sexual relations, it can only then be properly determined if the chosen partners are suitable for each other. This, however, is a very terrible and misleading deception of wrong thinking and wrong understanding. Of all things, it is sexual relations that call forth malignantly deceptive feelings in human beings, which they generate themselves by lustful, pleasureful thoughts. Particularly with female life forms, this very often leads to dependence on the respective partners, because they draw false conclusions through their falsely generated feelings and become of the faith that their sexual partner is the right one. In truth, sexual relations are only of correctness when clarity prevails in every form regarding love. Feelings and Empfindungen, fine spiritual perceptions, etc., and when a lifelong partnership in the form of a marital union is certain. If the sexual relationship is only then taken up and exercised, then it forms the crown of love in the form of bonding fulfillment.
You have said that wonderfully. It could have been said by Simyase or Manara.
Even we men are capable of saying the right words about these things.
I have also just noticed that on the Earth, that is unfortunately not possible.
I would not claim that because the Earth human being is also so far developed, that there are men who can truly express these things in good words. But now, my friend, it is back to the time that I remember my assignments and therefore must leave you.
Then farewell, my friend, and very dear thanks.
Until we meet again, I will come back in a short period of time.